If you're pursuing fertility treatment, it's really important to know two things. One is you have to have the right information, and two, you really need to regulate your nervous system. And if you don't regulate your nervous system, it's really difficult to make good decisions, to stay in treatment, and a whole host of other things. And we talk a lot on this podcast about getting the right information. I have all sorts of experts giving you lots of information, but what we don't talk a lot about is calming your nervous system. So today we have Jennifer Edmonds, and she runs a group called Element Pilates Yoga. And she went on her own fertility journey and has learned so many things about how to calm her own nervous system. And she became a fertility yoga specialist. And she's going to teach us a little bit about that today and about how you can calm your nervous system and how to get started understanding how you can have a better life, a better mindset, and a better journey to parenthood. So join us today. I think you'll really like this episode. Welcome to Building Your Family. This is a podcast about fertility treatment, donor conception, surrogacy, and all the ways the modern family is built. My name is Lisa Schumann. I'm your host. I'm a researcher, I'm a licensed therapist, I'm an author, and I'm here to share all the ways that you can have an easier journey to parenthood. And today we're going to talk exactly about that. Having an easier journey. It is so stressful to go through fertility treatment, as you know. And it's so important, not just for your health, but also for your decision making, to have an easier state of mind, to have your nervous system be more relaxed. And so today I have an expert on that subject. Her name is Jennifer Edmonds, and she's from Element Pilates Yoga. And I met her online, and she is so lovely, as you will see. And she has her own fertility journey, and she will share with us how she got to this place where she's created her own program to help other people. So thanks for coming, Jen. So nice to see you.
Oh, you too, Lisa. Thank you for that beautifully warm welcome. It's an honor to be here. I love all of the work that you do. So thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. So let's start with telling everyone, how did this whole thing start for you? How did you get involved in yoga and breath work and all of the things that you're doing?
It is a long story, so we'll do the short version of it today.
Okay.
So I got married when I was 33, and I was relatively young and healthy in the scheme of things, as was my husband. We didn't even cross our minds that we would have any trouble starting a family. Just never occurred to me. So we were really excited to start our family, and we, tried our best, and we were just one of those very unlucky couples. Just wasn't meant to be so easy. So a couple of years later, I went through my second round of IVF, which gave us one little untested embryo, and that little embryo made it all the way. And that is now my daughter, who is 6 years old. So that was my first fertility journey, which, I already had in the back of my mind. Getting pregnant is hard. It's going to be another long journey. It's going to take a lot of work. So when she was a year old, we started trying again. And I think I really carried that mindset with me. This isn't going to be a simple, easy fix. We were told there was sort of no reason we couldn't fall pregnant naturally. So we did try again for a while, but to no luck again as well. We were referred back eventually to IVF. And the last cycle that I did, we ended up with two perfect little embryos actually, but neither of them stuck.
Oh.
And by the time we'd gotten to this stage, it was many, many years. And it was March of 2020. And we all know what happened in March of 2020. Actually, it was the day after I found out I wasn't pregnant from that round of IVF, we went into lockdown. And every fertility clinic in my city shut because obviously IVF, as so many people know, was considered a non-essential surgery during those times. So we were looking at the prospect that was it for our family building. And, I was so grateful that we had this beautiful little girl, but it had always been our dream to expand our family, and it was really hard for me to get my head around. I had a whole bunch of health issues by this stage. I had always been a healthy person. I'd worked in the fitness industry for a long time. I'd been teaching Pilates for about 12 years at this stage. I was an athlete growing up. But on my fertility journey, I developed a thyroid condition. I had huge hormonal imbalances. My cycle was all over the place, where it had been really regular, really healthy when I was younger. But, by this stage, it was a mess. I developed chronic insomnia for many, many months, to the point I was put on sleeping tablets. And, it's sort of, when I look back at it, when I was taking thyroid medication, sleeping tablets, being pumped full of so many hormones through IVF cycles, it is no wonder that I didn't fall pregnant. But at the time, you just think, I'll do everything, I'll do it
Mm.
all, let's keep
Mm-hmm.
going. And when we went into lockdown, my studio closed, so I couldn't go to work. And this was probably my lowest point. I didn't really know how to get past the idea that I would never be able to have another child. And it was around this time that a girl I used to work with said to me, listen, I don't know if you're interested, but I have a friend who teaches fertility yoga. Do you want to give it a go? And I did not want to give it a go. I had just been
Mm-hmm.
through so much. And you think, IVF is sort of the pinnacle of fertility treatments, right? And when that
Yes.
doesn't work, you're really left with very little to consider as, additional alternatives. And so I thought, look, I'm not really interested, but I've literally tried everything else. I'm in lockdown. I've got nothing else to do. I'll give it a
Why
go.
not?
And without sounding too dramatic, Lisa, it changed my life. It was little things that happened to me, first of all. After a few weeks of working with this amazing yoga teacher, I noticed I would wake up in the mornings and I would look forward to the day. I wouldn't be so miserable. It was nice just to be home with my husband and my daughter. And, we get to play games and cook meals. And it actually became kind of fun after a while, which
Wow.
was such
Mm-hmm.
a game changer for me. And I started to sleep without my sleeping pills, which was huge. And then my thyroid started to heal. And, I'd go in and have tests to make sure, my thyroid was still under control. And without changing anything else, no medication changes, it started to get better.
Wow.
And then a few months after that, I fell pregnant naturally for the very first time in my life.
Oh
And
my
it was
gosh.
something that no doctor told me was possible. I think I was given something like a 5% chance of IVF working. So this blew me away, and we were so shocked. We couldn't believe it. We went to the doctor, we had the pregnancy confirmed, everything was looking amazing. But sadly, we lost that baby at about 8
Oh,
weeks. And don't get me wrong, this was a really hard time, and I couldn't get out of bed and I struggled, but there was something playing in the back of my mind now. There was this new sense of possibility and hope that I had done something that I never thought was possible. And I wanted to know why. I wanted to learn how I had made so many changes by just something so small. It was just mind blowing to me. So I retrained as a yoga teacher, and I went and dove into my 500-hour teaching certification. And then I became certified in a whole bunch of modalities that relate to women's health and pre and postnatal and fertility work. And I just started employing all these principles into my own life. And a few months later, again, I fell pregnant naturally. And that little boy is now 2.
wow.
And that is why I do this work now, because, I see it time and time again that, women are told that there is nothing they can do and that that's just their lot in life. And, I just don't think that is true for so many people. And I am proof of that. And I see it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's such a blessing that I'm able to share this with others now as well.
What an incredible story. That's an amazing story. As I spoke to you before we started, I talk a lot about even if, we don't know, right? We can't always control what happens to us, but certainly we can work on our mindset and help ourselves get to a better place emotionally. We know that at the very least, it's good for our blood pressure and nervous system and decision making. And if we don't make the right decisions, we can't get through this process in the way that we need to. And if we can't stay in treatment, certainly we're not going to continue to get pregnant. So there's so many reasons that this is so vitally important. Were you practicing every day or a couple of times a week? I'm just wondering, because I'm sure the viewers are curious, how much of a commitment is it to do these practices?
It's a question I get asked so, so often because I was really resistant to doing these kind of practices myself. I literally did them because I thought, oh, look, at the very least, it's something to pass the time. Maybe it will help me get pregnant. And that was kind of my thought process. And so I started with a really gentle breathwork practice that would take 5 minutes. And just sitting there and slowing down, focusing on my breath for 5 minutes felt amazing. And it was the one thing that I just hadn't done my entire many years worth of trying to conceive. I hadn't slowed down and I hadn't stopped and asked my body what it wanted. So I think when you can start to just carve out little moments like that, you realize over time what a difference it makes. And that's when people tend to want to go a little bit deeper into the practice. So, people tend to think that yoga is, you have to go to a studio and do a 60 to 90-minute class, and that's yoga. But that's actually not what it's about at all. The things that you see people doing on the mat is just one part of yoga. There is so much more
Hmm.
to it. There is meditation, there is breath work, there is the way you treat yourself, the way you treat others. There is a lot of components that make up a yoga practice. So for those who think, gosh, I don't want to have to add another hour to my day, I'm already taking so many supplements, I'm going to appointments, I'm going to acupuncture, I don't have time, then I think if you can start to carve out 5 minutes here and 5 minutes there, it adds up. It adds up over time. And the practices that I teach for those who do want to get on to their yoga mats every day, if you can do 10 to 15 minutes, then that's a practice that is better than nothing. And then on the days that you've got more time, then you can carve out an hour if you want to. So I would practice every day, but it didn't look like an hour long yoga and meditation session. Sometimes it would be just some really gentle breathwork exercises before I went to bed. Sometimes if I had the time, I would do an hour long practice at lunchtime and then some meditation in the evenings. It really fits around what you need within your life and your schedule. But the important thing more than that is consistency rather than length of time that you want to spend working on yourself and your body. So I think that, 5 minutes twice a day is better than an hour once every 2 weeks. So I think that
Mm-hmm.
that would be what I would say. Start small and build from there.
That's great. So what you're saying is making me think about something, Jen, that I guess is, maybe something that people don't really think about very often, which is that as you start to kind of shift into more of a self-care practice, and I'm not saying, people very often think about self-care. They think, well, I should just put my feet up and eat popcorn and watch a movie. And it's not just about that. It's about actively taking care of yourself,
Mm.
right? And it doesn't have to exhaust you, as you're saying, but slowly, when you start to build these habits, you're also able to start to shift your mind. You were starting to talk a little bit about, you have a bit of a mindset shift, right? Your kind of thought or value system starts to change a little bit.
I completely agree. And it's one of the hardest things, I think, to do on your fertility journey. If you've got time to yourself, you really just want to block out all of these difficult emotions that come up, and playing on your phone or putting Netflix on is a much easier way to deal with your emotions than working with them and working through them, isn't it? So
Mhm,
you're right.
mhm.
This idea of self care has been packaged up in things like, going for a massage or doing a spa
Yes,
day. And
yes.
and there's nothing wrong with any of those things, and that's great, but I don't think that that is self-care on its truest level. You really need to address what's going on internally within your body and looking at your thought patterns and what is constantly coming up and what is
Mhm,
running your mind in the background every day. And when you get to the point that you've been trying to conceive for so long that it is all you can think about from the moment you wake up to the moment you fall asleep at night, you know that
mhm.
it has completely taken over your life. Then
Yes,
you know you need to
100%.
do something about it, don't you? I'm sure so many of us can relate to that.
Yes. It's so consuming, right? I mean, and as much as I always say to people, I feel like it's having a bad affair, right? You go to work and people say, "How was your weekend?" "Oh, it was fine. Everything's fine. I went out." And, meanwhile, you're panicked. You're staring at the ceiling at night thinking, when is my next doctor's appointment? You're afraid to go to the bathroom. And I mean, there's just so many things that happen every moment of every day that are stressful.
Hmm.
And without knowing it, as you're saying, in the background, we all have these messages that keep coming into our minds and these thought patterns that really put us in a really stressful place. And the treatment itself is stressful enough, but the way that our bodies react to it can be so much more stressful for our bodies and
Mm.
put us in a place where it makes everything worse in a lot of ways, right? It
Mm.
makes it feel twice as long before the next appointment. It makes us feel twice as depressed. It makes us cranky with our partners. It makes us, feel isolated. There's so many things that happen that we don't even see, right? We just see, yes, fertility treatment's stressful, but we don't see how we can start to mitigate this a little bit. And, we can't mitigate it entirely. The fact remains that it's a terrible thing that anybody has to go through. But if we can start to make it a little bit better, it makes such a huge difference in our lives.
That's it. And that was the biggest thing for me. Despite the fact that I felt pregnant naturally, it gave me so many amazing things within my life, even well before that. And I
Hmm.
stopped letting my whole life be dictated by getting pregnant. I started to eat foods that I enjoyed again. I'd have a glass of wine on the weekend and, just giving yourself that permission to let go a little bit is just such a game changer, isn't it?
Oh, yes. Yes. I mean, we're all, worried about all of that. And, oh my gosh, now we hear that, you can't eat deli meat or you can't go out for sushi or, right. I mean, there's all these things that we get so panicked about. And, I think also women are sadly even more self-harming in a way, right? We put ourselves in the situations where we're critical of ourselves. We scrutinize every little thing we're doing. We feel like, we're going to be the person who's ruining our lives. There must be something that we could do differently. Maybe we're doing something wrong. And, it's
Yeah.
so upsetting in some ways that we just don't give ourselves the room to accept that we can only do what we can, right? And this is one more thing that we can do.
Exactly. And I think that, we're told from a very early age that as soon as we have sex without protection, we will fall pregnant. So we grow up
Yes.
as teenagers thinking this. And then, we get into our 20s and 30s and we assume that it's going to be really easy. And when it isn't, you are filled with so much shame and just so much frustration that your body just doesn't do the one thing that it was designed to do, that you've been told your whole life that it will be able to do as soon as you want it
Hmm.
to happen. And gosh, there's so much anger that comes with that. And it's so hard the way that we end up treating ourselves when we are put in that position. And you're right, women are so, so hard on themselves, aren't they? In a way that is, yeah, universal.
Yeah, it
Mm.
really is. So what are some of the, because I think people will be very interested to hear about this because we're talking about kind of mindset shifts also. Once you start to commit to a practice, I think in some ways it happens naturally. I hear yoga teachers sometimes saying, you know, yoga ruined my prior life. I guess in a way, like once you start doing yoga, just kind of naturally you don't want to eat bad food anymore. You don't
Mm.
want to, you know, go on social media where there's gossip. You don't want to get angry at, your cousin who said something to you in fifth grade or whatever, and all of a sudden your mind starts to shift a little bit about wanting to live a more kind of loving or graceful life in some ways, even though you're starting a physical practice. I think mentally you also start to shift kind of automatically, right?
You absolutely do. And you get addicted to it. And now
Mhm,
things, if I go and eat, a really heavy, greasy meal, I feel really rotten the next day. And
mhm,
maybe it's also a little bit to do with age, of course, but I just love the days where, I feel rested when I wake up. I've got time to go and move my body and use my breath and just really just celebrate everything that my body is capable of. And then, eating nourishing foods and having great conversations with people that you care about. It does tend to ruin your past life, as
mhm.
you said. It's a very funny way of putting it. But there's very scientific reasons for all of that as well. I mean, yoga brings you into such a place of regulation and the sense of feeling safe in your body makes you feel grounded. And again, like you said, it makes the rest of your life feel easier. And going through the fertility journey is never going to be easy in any way at all. But
Right.
to make it just 5% easier, I think anything is worth that. And when you find something that can just allow you to move through these really difficult times with more grace and more compassion for yourself, is one of the greatest gifts that you can give to yourself.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. My name is Lisa Schumann. I'm a therapist, a researcher, an author, and I am passionate about helping people find a better journey to parenthood. I created the Center for Family Building to help people understand how to make decisions not just for the short term, but for a lifetime. We have group counseling, individual counseling, couples counseling, and lots of other services that can help people find the answers that they're looking for. Just take a look at our website so you can see a few of the thousands of people we helped build a better path to parenthood. The decisions you make are too important to leave up to chance. Arm yourself with the right information. Take a look at our website and sign up for a session with one of our therapists, join one of our groups, or access one of our programs, and you will quickly see why our strategies are so effective. Now back to our episode. And how did you feel that your life started to change when you went through this, Jen, as you were starting to integrate a practice? What were some of the things that you noticed about your shift?
I was definitely nicer to my husband. That's one. He'll
Mm,
attest to that.
mm-hmm.
I guess I was
Wow.
just easier to live with. I found it a lot more easy to be present with my daughter, which I really struggled with. I had this, she wasn't at the age where she was constantly asking for a sibling, but I knew she would be getting there soon. And it
Mm-hmm.
would just always be on my mind as soon as I'd be with her. It's just these feelings of this isn't enough. I'm not enough. I can't do this for her. I can't, it really took over the time that I spent with her. But I think that my yoga practice really gave me back that sense of presence and just being able to be with her and not need anything else, just to be in that moment. And that really, really helped me. I also found I was less triggered by others. And
Hmm.
I'm not saying I wasn't triggered at all, but I found it easier when, people would announce their second or third pregnancies, or someone would say in something insensitive as we've all experienced. I found that I wasn't quite so upset by those things anymore. And they still bothered me, but they didn't ruin my entire day, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest thing that goes beyond my years of trying to conceive is that it has stayed with me. My journey of motherhood the second time around was so different. After my first pregnancy, I was rushing to get, my body back in inverted commas, this whole idea of don't look like you're pregnant 6 weeks after you give birth. And I wanted to get back to work and fit into all my clothes again and be back at the gym and all this crazy stuff. And I ended up going back to work when she was about 7 weeks old. And I just didn't have time for any of that after my son was born. Couldn't care less. I still don't have the same clothes that I used to have. They don't fit me anymore, and I just don't care. And I think that it gave me that just peace of mind to be okay with who I am. And that has stayed with me. So yeah, that's the biggest,
Wow.
biggest gift that it gave me.
That's remarkable. And how long, because I'm sure people are curious about this also, how long do you feel it took for you to get from just starting a practice to getting to a place where you actually started to feel better?
So I started practicing fertility yoga in March of 2020. And within 2 weeks, I was no longer taking sleeping tablets. At the beginning of July, I fell pregnant naturally. And so that was a very short amount of time in the scheme of things.
Yes, very
And
short.
I, as I mentioned, I did lose that baby, but I fell pregnant again naturally at the very end of December in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
That was about 6 months later. You know, you can make huge changes in a very small amount of time. I wish it was a guarantee. I wish I could say to people, I've got a magic wand and come and do some practices with me and I'll get you a baby within 4 weeks. But sadly, I do not have that magic wand. Sometimes I feel like I do, and people come and work with me, and these things happen, and that is incredible. But it isn't, I don't want people to look at it as a quick fix. I want
Mm-hmm.
them to look at it as a way to change the way they look at themselves and their lives and their bodies. And they'll continue to work in that way well beyond getting that positive pregnancy test, because, we're not doing all of this to get a pregnancy test positive, are we? We're doing this to have a child and to create a life and a family. You don't want to get the positive pregnancy test and then, not worry and not enjoy the pregnancy. You want to enjoy all of it. You want to be present for all of it. You want to enjoy being a mum for the first time and second or third time, wherever your journey is at. And I don't think that I would have been able to enjoy anywhere near as much as I did that second time around without my yoga practice. And, I
Mm-hmm.
used to teach 35 to 40 classes a week at the studio. And, I
Wow.
loved the job, but I was so run down and so busy. And I just thought that was my life. And that was the only way I was going to be able to, continue my kind of work. But, this practice has given me a completely new business on top of all of the things that I created for my family. So it's endless. When you realize that you are physically capable and you see these small changes happening within your life, you realize there's so much potential. It goes so much beyond that positive pregnancy test. So I hope that
Mm.
inspires people.
That's so important, I think, and people need to realize, right? Because everybody's situation is different, right? We can't say yoga is a cure for infertility. It's not. And we don't know where you are in terms of your reproductive years, how good, what kind of quality your eggs are. We can't control that. But if there is
Mm,
something that you can control, why not? Right. And why not
mm.
put yourself, as you're saying, in a better frame of mind so you can stay in treatment, so you can make better decisions, so you can be
Yes.
a better partner, right? So that your partner doesn't feel beaten up all the time. And certainly with secondary infertility, as you're saying, it's so natural to be so stressed out that you feel like you can't even connect with your child because you're so stressed out about number two. And I know a lot of people say, well, I just want number one. How could you think about number two? But, we have research that shows that number two, number three, however many children you're really wishing for is the number that's in your mind. And if that's your
Mm,
dream and whatever your dream is, it's not being realized, it's painful, right? So everyone's entitled to their own dreams and what's right for them. And being able to put your dreams in perspective and being able to feel calmer in your life is only, a good thing. So I think that's fantastic, Jen.
yeah. Thank you. No,
Really.
I completely
Yeah.
agree.
That's fantastic. So, do you run these classes online, or how do you run your classes? You said you were teaching classes 30 a week or something like that, and that
Yes.
I imagine was in person.
Yes, no, I spent most of my 20s and my early 30s in a Pilates studio teaching that many classes a week. And, I didn't ever think there would be another way to run a business. But, it's I think COVID changed the world in a lot of ways. And
Hmm.
whilst it was a very horrible experience for of all of the obvious reasons, it gave us a few gifts, and this ability to connect around the world online was one of the ways that it helped us. And I never saw it coming. I did a lot of work with pregnant and postpartum clients. And when my clinic shut down, obviously I took all of those clients online. And when the studio reopened again, they didn't want to come back to the studio in person. They wanted to continue online. And I was mind blown. I never saw that coming. And I guess that's where the idea started, that perhaps this would be a wonderful thing to offer people online, because, when you're struggling on your fertility journey and you're having a rough day, like, the last thing you want to do is go to a studio full of people, potentially running into someone you know. And it's just so much easier to put on some comfortable tracksuit pants, roll out your mat in your bedroom or somewhere in your home, and just have some time and space for yourself. And it worked so beautifully for me. That was the way that I started practicing it. And I think that it's even better online than in person in a lot of ways. It would be lovely if we could
Hmm.
have fertility yoga at every yoga studio in the world, but it'll be a while till we catch up to that, I imagine.
Mm.
So until then,
Mhm.
99% of the work that I do is online. I do workshops and in-person work in Sydney in Australia. So if you're listening to this and you are based in Sydney, let me know and you can come work with me. But otherwise, yes, the programs that I offer, they work alongside the menstrual cycle. So you can start to tune in with what your body needs at each stage of the cycle, which is one of the more obvious differences about fertility yoga. We work with what the body needs both energetically and physically at every stage. And you can do this in the privacy of your own home on demand, and you can choose how much time you've got that day. You can choose a 15-minute practice from my program or an hour practice if that's what you prefer to do. There are also lots of different meditations and breathwork exercises included within it as well. So, if you're needing some help falling asleep, or you'd like a breathwork exercise to help calm your mind down while you're waiting in your doctor's office, something like that, there are lots and lots of different little practices that you can dive into. I do run group classes online as well, which work
Mhm.
beautifully because it's a nice way for women who are in the same boat to connect and talk about all of the things that they're going through, which is really lovely.
Mhm.
I have students from 6 different continents, which is pretty wild, all around the world. So it's a really, really wonderful way to connect.
That's lovely. That's lovely. That's so nice. And what do you feel is in terms of like the yoga meditation balance? Do you feel that it's just personal or that there's some sort of ideal mix between both of those things?
Meditation is one of those kind of prickly subjects, isn't it? Because so many people don't like meditating, or they'll come
Mhm.
to me and say, I can't meditate. I can't just sit down and stop my thoughts. So I think the important thing to know, what is meditation, and it isn't about stopping the thoughts or about, just sitting there in silence. It's about being aware of your thoughts and aware of where your mind is going. And that can take many different forms. You can meditate while you're driving. You don't have to be sat down, cross legged, closing
Hmm.
your eyes. You can be driving along the road. Can you be 100% present with the road in front of you? And see how long you can be present in that moment until a thought pops into your head. Oh, I have to buy milk on the way home. Another thought pops into your head. Oh, I have to do this tomorrow morning. That's a
Mhm.
meditation. And I like to kind of get people out of this idea, well, okay, I need to sit down for 20 minutes and just silently sit there and breathe. And that's
Mhm.
great if you enjoy that and that's part of a practice that works for you, go for it. But I find a lot of people do not vibe with that idea of meditation. The
Mm.
other thing I like to offer is a guided meditation. So instead of just lying there and being quiet, you can pop some earphones in and just listen to something that's guided, and it will help you bring awareness to your body and your breath. And that's a wonderful way to help you get into a meditative state. So I think, to answer your question more specifically, there isn't a specific balance. I think a lot of the physical yoga practices that we see people doing on a yoga mat are a form of moving meditation, because your awareness becomes the body and the breath and the present moment, as opposed to, again, I've got to get milk on my way home.
Mhm.
So I think that meditation becomes all encompassing if you can let it. But for those who don't like sitting down in the silence, don't worry. There is a way of including meditation into your life that you will enjoy. It's just about finding the right one.
Yeah, so it sounds almost like it's more of a kind of a mindfulness practice,
Absolutely.
and whether you're starting your mindfulness in a meditation or in a yoga or whatever you're doing, that's really key, is to be able to develop mindfulness and be able to get more into that space in yourself.
It definitely is. And you'll get to a point where you can sit down for 20 minutes and just focus on your breath. And I think that when you get to that stage, that's where the gold is. That's when your intuition starts to wake up a little bit more, where you can really listen to your body. And I find that
Mhm.
I get so many ideas, just, creative ideas and other ways I can support my students, and just by sitting in that silent place. But that has taken me years to get to, and it's
Yeah.
not even something I will do every day. You can't come into a quiet meditation from a place of dysregulation. If you've had a really busy day or if you're really exhausted, I find that it isn't the right practice for you. You've really got to be in a place of calm and receptiveness, to be able to sit with yourself for that amount of time. So gosh, it is a practice.
It is, yes, 100%. And people say, well, I can't do that. I can't practice. And, I've heard people say, well, if you can't do it, if you can't sit down and meditate for a second or a minute or whatever, and you say, that's because I can't focus, it's kind of like saying, I'm too dirty to take a shower. So,
Yeah, exactly.
you know,
So true.
yeah, it's when we need it most, right? When it can be
Exactly.
hardest to get into that
Exactly.
practice. Yeah.
Yes, and there are ways to get yourself, when people say that, it's often because they are quite dysregulated and they've been on this journey for a long time. They've been in this state of fight or flight for
Yes.
months or years, and you
Yes.
can't sit down and meditate when your body is reacting to a stressor. You've got to get yourself down to a more regulated place before you can be open to meditation. So I don't want people to think that they've had a really distressing phone call from their doctor and that means they need to sit down and meditate. I think that's impossible. So
Hmm.
it is learning how to adjust these practices to what your body needs in the moment in order to be able to help you.
Right. And finding out what because maybe then it would be good to do a yoga practice or take a walk or do something different, right? Move your body. Hmm.
Yes, all these practices of, just shaking out the body and getting out some of that frustration and that energy, that's what you need
Yes.
in those more stressful moments. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, that's so insightful, Jen. And I think this is really, really helpful information. As we wind down, is there anything else you feel like the listeners should know or things we haven't touched on?
When you start going on this journey and you go down the medical route of fertility treatments, you completely hand over your body to someone else.
Hmm.
You're given
Yeah.
blood tests and internal scans and procedures and surgeries, and the list goes on. And you get so disconnected from your body, you completely lose trust in your ability. You think, well, all my faith is now in that doctor or that treatment, and we forget that, sure, maybe we do need IVF to fall pregnant. That's, the truth for so many of us. But there is also so much that you can do to support not just your fertility, but your overall health, your mental health along the way.
Hmm.
And that isn't something that I see a lot of doctors telling their patients. They'll say, take it easy, just, go for a walk or try not to stress, all these really unhelpful things. But
Hmm.
there are practical, simple, tangible things that you can do each day that are not expensive and not difficult that you can start incorporating into your life. And I just want people to know that they have so much more power and control over their own bodies and their own journeys than perhaps they are led to believe.
Yes, I'm with you 100% there. I absolutely agree with that. It's so important and it's so hard to do, but I
Mm.
think on every level, it's important, as I often say, I feel like so many of the decisions we make in fertility treatment are so important. Some can't be unwound, right? How we choose an egg donor, how we choose a fertility treatment, or how we choose anything, surrogacy clinic. All of these decisions are so important, and we can't make them with a calm mind if our mind isn't calm, right? It's very hard we're just kind of rushing to pregnancy, and we have to remember, as you said, we have a whole life with this person. We need to make sure we make good decisions. And that's very hard to do. So, even for that reason alone, it's important to kind of get your nervous system in order and get yourself. And as you're saying, Jen, it's so great for your life, right?
Yeah, that's it. And when you can zoom out and look beyond that positive pregnancy test, I think things get easier. When you think, I'm doing this for my family, for my future, not just that
Yes.
positive test, it does make things a lot easier. And what you just said then, Lisa, honestly, I wish someone had said to me 10 years ago because it would have made all the difference to me. So thank you.
Well, thank you for coming here, Jen. I really, really appreciate seeing you it feels like in person, even though we're not together. It feels like in person compared to online. It's so nice to see you. And
You
I
too.
think this has really been great. Thank you so much for all you do.
Thank you so much for having me, Lisa. It's been an honor.
And where can people reach you?
Well, the best place probably is on Instagram. My handle is jen.elementpilatesyoga. And you can find me there, my website, Element Pilates Yoga as well. And I have a free fertility yoga guide if anyone would like to start employing these practices into their own life and just see how it works for them and for their bodies, and can start seeing and noticing these differences for yourselves. So you can find the link to that over on my Instagram page as well.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, thank you. And thank you, everyone, for coming here. I'm sure you really enjoyed this episode as much as I have. And please reach out to Jen. She's terrific. And reach out to us anytime at familybuilding.net. And please subscribe and come back, because that's how we keep going. And until next time, have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Lisa.
Hi, it's Lisa Schumann. I hope that you enjoyed that video, and I hope it helped you. And if it did, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe, because that's how we keep going. It's really important to us. And if you liked it, you might like this one.